Hi everyone, Jane here again. Thank you for watching my channel today and welcome. I am going to be using a sheet out of my handmade journal today. This is sugarcane paper from Hannemuhle, and I'm going to be using stamps that I designed with Cleverprints. I will put a list in the description box of all the things I use in this video and links where needed. Just to remind everybody that I do not receive any money for the links that I put. I'm not affiliated, they're not affiliated links. However, obviously I have designed these stamps for Cleverprints, so when they are purchased, I get a small percentage from the designing of those stamps. So I'm going to be using, I've used first of all the positive affirmation stamp, which is like little words, and then I'm using some of the Maker Mark stamps, and I'm using Archival black ink. I wanted something really strong on the page to start with because I just had an idea in my head that this was what I wanted to do today. It's a fairly quick project, but if you want to do something quite quick, this is a nice one to do. So I'm stamping just in a sort of a cluster in a way. I wanted the majority of the stamping to be in that bottom sort of right corner of the piece of card, and then just stretching it out slightly along the top and across to the other side. Once I had stamped as much as I wanted on there, I wanted to put some embossing on here. I had thought about doing some stenciling with texture paste, but then I thought actually a nice way of using things with watercolor is to have that sort of resist feel. So this is what I'm doing here. I added a little bit of anti-static bag to the page to start with because I knew my ink may be slightly wet and I didn't want the powder to cling to it. So then I went through the stencil, which is Viva Art, I do believe, by the Crafters Workshop. I'm not sure if it's the one that's even still available, but I will list it below. And I added my white embossing powder over the top after I'd put the Versamark ink through the stencil. And now I'm just heating it with my heat tool. And the trick with when you want to do like a resist technique is to make sure you don't overheat your embossing powder. You can overheat embossing powder and it tends to just then sink into your card and doesn't give you that resist feel. So once it was all heated, I'm going in with my favourite watercolours. So mostly I think I'm using Core today. I'm going with Quinacridone Gold, Alizarin Crimson and Cobalt Teal, I do believe. So I'm adding water to my page and then adding my paint in, and I'm just trying to get a really nice combination of those three. I've sort of gone for three primary-ish colours so that if they do blend, that they make some nice secondary colours. But I'm trying also not to let them blend all three together too much because then it will just start to get a little bit muddy. And once I was happy with that, I did leave it to dry because I didn't want to reheat that embossing powder. And then once it was dry, I'm just now wiping any excess watercolour off with a piece of kitchen towel. Now I've got a couple of stamps here that I also designed. One is from Arty Crafty Stuff and one is Crafty Sentiments, I do believe. And I just wanted just a little something to add to the page. And as it was, the word art was prominent in that stencil, I thought something sort of arty, a piece of arty equipment, and a paintbrush seemed like an ideal choice. So I've stamped out the brush and I've stamped out my sentiment using archival ink again onto a piece of watercolour cardstock, and I'm just going to cut that out with a very slight border because the style of the stamps does lend itself to that. Also makes it a lot easier, especially where the brush part is of the stamp, to sort of not have to get too fiddly with the bristles and things like that. Also, if you've got thinner areas on a stamped image or on a printed image, it is, you know, gives you a little bit more support if you leave a little bit of a border around it rather than cutting right to the edge. And then just trimming my sentiment ready to go on the page as well. I thought it would be ideal to now just use the same sorts of colours that I use in the background with the image. So I am painting first of all with Quinacridone Gold from Core. I'm then using a little bit of the Winsor & Newton Davy Grey for the sort of the feral part of the brush. And then I think I mix a couple of colours together to get a bit of a brown for the brush handle. So it's a bit of a mixture, this palette of colours. I've got Core in there, I've got Daniel Smith in there, I've got Schmincke in there, and I've got Winsor & Newton in there. Oh, and I've got a new one in there as well. I've just remembered I bought the Roman Schmull Potter's Pink, which I've now added to the palette, and I will be using that in a video at some point. And once I'd painted that, I decided I just need to give it a very quick heat with my heat tool just to make sure it was dry before I stuck it onto my page. And then it was just a case of deciding how I wanted the elements to look. So auditioning them, so to speak, seeing which one I liked the best, and eventually this is the sort of layout that I decided upon. And I'm using the Cosmic Shimmer acrylic glue to stick down my elements. I did debate whether to put something around the sentiment, but I thought it looked fine as it was. So thank you very much for watching today. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed and you'd like to continue with me on this arty crafty journey, do please click that subscribe button. And until the next time, bye bye.